In Her Words is a sub-series from Something Private, featuring lesser-known stories of women who have survived unspeakable pains and triumphed. Women who succeed despite and against all odds. This is their story. This week's story comes from a listener who reached out to me some weeks back, wanting to share her story. A newly single mother of one, she had suffered emotional abuse from her ex-husband for years, not knowing that such abuse counted as domestic violence. Today, she's safer and happier, but faces new challenges like co-parenting and coping with the fear of raising her son the wrong way. This is her story.
Hi, I'm a single mom, and I recently left my husband because he was emotionally abusive. I decided to leave for the sake of my own mental health and for the sake of my son. I definitely didn't foresee that I would be in this situation. We've been dating since, we met in school, and we've been together for so long, pretty much my entire adult life. And I feel like we kind of like grew together as a couple, as individuals. But somewhere along the way, things felt like it changed. We are both very opinionated. We have very strong personalities. And I guess it felt like it was part of the makeup of our relationship that we will always be having these debates. Like it was even just something that our friends were like, the two of them are always going on and about something or other. Yeah. So that's why I think for the longest time I questioned if he was abusive, because it was confusing to see that, no, like he's not controlling me. But what was happening was that, he was actually putting me down privately in private. So it wouldn't happen in front of other people. It only happened in private. And it will always end at the point where he would say something that hit me below the belt. Say something very personal, so painful that I just don't want to continue the argument, and then I will just, walk away or just say, let's just continue this later. He would make comments about the things that I ate. Like, are you sure you want to eat that? Do you even care about how you look like? So-and-so is exercising and she looks so good, and like, why can't you be more like her? I still couldn't help but let it get to me, because like, just that doubt would just slowly creep in. He said it so often that it made me start to ask myself, should I eat this cookie? Should I look more like this person? We each have different sort of careers. Mine's a little bit more creative. His is a little bit more, he's a professional lah. So he would kind of put down my work and say like, if you left it to me, I would be able to do it myself long. Like, I would be able to do what you can do. It always turns into but he could also do it, or he could do it better. After we had our boy, I think the abuse just really like took a big turn, and it got very direct. It just became things like, you are so incompetent, you can't do anything, like, why can't you just get it right? What kind of mother are you? It's so difficult to just keep hearing that. I'm already feeling inadequate as a new mom. I'm already tired, stressed, sleep deprived, exhausted, and then for him to come and like attack me, it was just very difficult. I still excuse the behavior because I was thinking, maybe he's just stressed at being a new dad, like responsibilities and stuff. So I kind of blocked him out, and I just like said, you know what, just let me deal with it. And I just went on with figuring out how to parent by myself, and he focused on work. And then, so then it became more like I am like bringing home the bacon, bringing the money, and then, so cliche this question, but what do you do all day? And why so difficult? But maybe because it happened when I was parenting. So in a way, even though the abuse was at its worst, I had to be very protective of myself. I had to have very strong sort of self-preservation because I have this child that's under my care. So it's like I cannot afford to break down. And the harder I fought to sort of stay up, the more he kept trying to like put me down and attack me, until it just got super ridiculous, like to the point that I'm like, what's going on? Why is it that that's all you're doing? Like, how come our relationship has been reduced to this state? He was starting to throw things in the house. It used to be just throwing things at, say, like the door or the wall, and the things just started landing closer and closer to me. Before that, he would come home drunk and then throw things around the house. But this incident was very scary because it happened when he was not drunk. So I was like, oh shit, that means it's him. I can't even blame it on the alcohol anymore.
Yeah.
Even at that point, I didn't even realize that it was abuse. I just saw it as he was out of control and he needed help. Told myself, oh, so if let's say my husband got into a car accident and suddenly became crippled, I wouldn't abandon him, right? So I saw it in that same frame, that same light. And I told my friends that that's why I'm staying on. And then one friend said, yeah, but even if your husband is in a wheelchair and he's telling you things like you're useless, you're lousy, that's also still wrong, what? And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I think for me, the last straw was when he started saying things to our son. So it used to be very just between him and I, just in private, to the point that I actually stopped being in the same room with him. I would just end up putting our son to bed and just end up falling asleep there. But actually, I'm just avoiding him. So he would then come inside the room and like purposely, like, you know, my son is sleeping, and then he'll just open the door and like, so you're just gonna fall asleep here again, is it? You don't care about me, is it? Then my son will wake up and he starts saying things to my boy like, now mommy only cares about you, she doesn't care about me. And then the more I tried to stop that, the more he would escalate and say like, you have forgotten how to be a wife. He just started shouting at me and insulting me in front of our son. And I think so as recent as last year, so last year our son was about 4. You know, actually as soon as he was 3, like he had been witnessing all these aggression. My son would actually stand in front of me and sort of like put his arms in front of me to kind of like protect me. And I was like, oh, this is not what I want for our boy. Like, this is not the kind of childhood, the kind of life that I want for him. I don't want him to grow up thinking that he has to protect me. I don't want him to grow up thinking that daddies shout at mummies. I didn't want our son growing up thinking that this is acceptable behavior. Basically, every single conversation or argument it just ended up making me feel like questioning myself, wondering how to make him feel better, wondering how to de-escalate the situation so that my son does not see us arguing and see him being aggressive. It's so stressful. I was just like hyper vigilant all the time, trying to watch out for signs of him becoming emotional, becoming aggressive. But even then, I still didn't even realize that I was a victim of abuse, because I didn't realize that all these things that he was doing were actually abusive behaviors. In my mind, I always thought abuse was, I imagined it was a husband who controlled his wife, not allowing her to go out, not allowing her to meet other people, controlling finances, controlling who she sees, you know, her movements, which he didn't do. All these things were meant to keep me in a weakened or more vulnerable position. That's when I realized one day, when I was like reading this checklist of what is emotional abuse, and then I was like, you know, on my phone, like checking it off. This is all the things that he did. And then it suddenly dawned on me, oh my God, I'm a victim of abuse. The term victim was very ironically empowering, because it made me realize that It's not me. It's not my doing. It's being done to me. I had no part to play in this thing happening to me. It's entirely his choice of behavior, his choice of action, his choice of interaction. For me, my part was to sort of realize that I'm perpetuating this cycle. I started to make plans for what I needed to do. So I called Aware, I called PAVE to find out what I should do, what I can do. And both of them told me to have a safety plan. So I made my safety plan. My safety plan was to, if anything happens, that I go to my mom's house. And I also had this sort of like passcode with my friends. So I think there was this thing, right, that was going around like, if I text you that I want a walnut brownie, that means I'm in danger. Please call the police and send it to my house. So I had that arrangement with my friends actually. On the day that I left, I actually did feel like I was in danger such that I wanted to call the police. So what happened that day was, it's like first thing in the morning, and then he started raging at me over something very innocuous. You know, it was after a whole week of us being in the house and him being in this very edgy mood. And I spent the entire week just trying to keep him calm. So I was completely burnt out, and I was like, I don't know how I can keep doing this. Like, I'm really going to break down already. I felt like I needed to leave. I needed to take action. And I just said I wanted to go to my mom's house. And he didn't let me leave. And I told him that if you don't let me leave, I'm going to call the police. So I just said, look, if you don't want me to call the police, then just let me leave lah. You know, let me go and let me just take a breather. And, you know, I promise I'll come back and we can talk about it again. So on that promise, he let me go. I packed up, I took my kid and we left. And then once I got to my mom's, then I called him and I said, it's over. I'm not coming back.
We're taking a short break. Something Private is a podcast produced by VFM. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast to get notified the second a new episode drops every Tuesday. We teamed up with some friends from Chapter Zero Singapore, a social enterprise by a team of women who advocate for children's rights by supporting the journey of parents who believe in raising children mindfully and respectfully. For all of you young parents, or even if you're not ready to have this conversation, still listen up. Chapter Zero believes that mindful parenting can help us learn more about ourselves and our unresolved issues in order to break intergenerational cycles of violence, trauma, or any negative patterns of behavior. They run workshops on respectful parenting, parenting effectiveness training, and nonviolent/compassionate communication. This is so important because part of the process of understanding yourself really boils down to unpacking your upbringing, because everyone is a product of nature and nurture, right? Little tip from Chapter Zero for young parents wondering how they can talk to their children about sensitive topics like racism, inclusivity, sexuality, and body positivity. Communication should be open, authentic, and developmentally appropriate, so you can share your values with your children while leaving room for them to be independent thinkers. You can follow them on Facebook at Chapter Zero Singapore and Instagram at chapterzerosg, or drop them an email at connect@chapterzero.org. Have a thought or comment you'd like to share? Drop us a message on Instagram at Something Private Pod. That's Something Private Pod, Pod, or email us at nicole@somethingprivate.fm. Now back to the episode.
So actually I'm in a better place now. But I still feel a bit disconnected because mentally I feel safer. I feel more secure. But emotionally I'm very heartbroken because I didn't want to end up being like this. And also, obviously I loved him a lot. That's why I tried so hard and I fought so hard. But at the end of the day, I cannot sacrifice myself for him. On the part of being divorced and leaving him, I actually haven't dealt with, the emotions of what's going to happen to him. I've just sort of parked everything one side first. And maybe I will process it slowly lah. But right now I'm just focusing on myself, my son, and my friends. They're thinking that I should be happier. But I'm not necessarily happier. I'm safer, but I'm not like say joyful or anything, because I'm grieving for the life I thought I had, the love I thought I had. I'm still trying to understand what happened, to be honest. I mean, I was reading this book on healing, and it said that the kind of love that the survivor experienced with the abuser, it's not that it wasn't love. It's just that it's a conditional love. It's up to me now to kind of like find my unconditional love. Now I have to really I have to earn enough to support me, to support my son, especially in this COVID situation. Very scary to not have a financial safety net. Which I don't have anymore now, because all my savings I put in a joint account. And because I stopped working, then we started relying on the savings, so that's kind of like also being depleted. I'm also relying on my family for support financially as well. One of the things that I kind of struggled with was also, do I let my son still see him? And I think I also realized that my son has a very conflicted relationship with him, because he has seen, you know, the father like lashing out at me, but yet they've also had their own moments of like playtime. I did consult my therapist, and my therapist actually said that biological father is irreplaceable, and it is if the father is willing to be there. And I mean, he may not be a super healthy dad or a super great dad, but it is important that he's there in our son's lives. But because I grew up with a single parent life, of course I wish for my son to have like two parents. My mom was very sad when, she was very sad to see that I was going through all this, and of course she was like wondering if, like what part she had to play in it. She's like, now you're single like me, and it's tough lah. I think she knows the struggles of being a single mom, and now so do I. It's very lonely, but then thinking back also, this is not about what I wish or what I want already lah. It's just no choice already, and it's just for the better. And then what she said to me was that you can have a normal structured family who is dysfunctional, and you can have a broken family that's actually more functional. And she said what you're doing is you're actually making it more functional for your son. So even though it is going to be a difficult transition for him, living in a new place, living separately, but it's actually going to be much better for him emotionally, mentally, and for me as well. And it's so important for me to be in a good place, because I'm the one that's bringing him up. So, okay, before this, right, like when the priority of how you take care of yourself is that you care for yourself first, then the marriage comes after that, then the children. I have to rescue myself to take care of my son lah. So I came across Respectful Parenting, and it's just a community of parents who follow this approach. There are many ways, there are many sort of schools of thoughts. But this group, they generally follow what is called RIE or RIE. So which fundamentally believes that children are inherently capable beings, and they are already whole individual beings, in the sense that they are not born like empty vessels. You're not here to just fill them up. They have their own thoughts, their own opinions, their own personality, and as parents, it's our role is actually just to facilitate their learning experience and their journey, because ultimately it's their life that they're going to lead. Who knows what's going to happen 5 years from now, 10 years from now. The world is going to be so different, right? So if you tell them, for example, in our time or my mom's time, be an accountant or be a lawyer, be a doctor, then you will be set for life, right? Not necessarily so. But what I can do to support my son is to make sure that he knows what are boundaries. Make sure he knows what is a healthy relationship. Do emotional coaching with him so that he will not be susceptible to, or be less susceptible to being manipulated. Or so that he can see like, no, this is wrong. I should not be shouted at. My worst fear is that he will either become a victim like me or become an abuser like his dad. So I'm doing everything I can to show my son what a healthy relationship is like, to teach my son about emotions, about communication, about needs, about feelings. And because I am imagining that he's getting a different messaging when he goes over to his dad, so then I have to be extra strong and extra pointed about my messaging. And also because I feel like society's messaging is also very unhealthy, in the sense that negative emotions are frowned upon, expressing of emotions are frowned upon. Boundaries are seen as something unpleasant. Like, you say no, you're expected to explain why. But actually you shouldn't have to explain what. If you say no means no lah, right? I do not consent means I do not consent. I don't have to explain to you why. What?
Would you say that your present circumstances is something that is frowned upon?
I've actually avoided having this conversation with anyone, basically, because I didn't like the idea of them looking at me and feeling sorry for me, actually. Personally, there is still that uncomfortable feeling about having been a victim, and also having to label him as an abuser. And then at the same time, I also don't want to be given sorry looks and be seen as a weak person, or as I don't want to answer annoying questions like, why didn't you leave earlier? Or didn't you see this when you first got together with him? It's like, no lah, of course lah. If not, I would have left, right? But these are the questions that I ask myself. Why didn't I leave earlier? I have to answer to myself, like, why? But I feel quite hopeful for the future. I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like, okay, at least now I'm safe. I know how to manage my son. We have a great relationship. I mean, he's only 5, but he's so expressive and he's so mature for his age. And yeah, I feel quite positive, for the future, although I don't know what's going to happen.
If there was somebody in like a similar situation who needed to hear like some words of encouragement, what would your advice be?
I wanted to be very careful to say that it doesn't mean that because I got out of this situation that anybody can get out of an abusive situation, because there's so many factors. Like, I feel very fortunate because I have good friends, I have good family, I had savings to last me through. But I know of so many people that are in situations where they don't have money, or they don't have a place to go, and then there's so many obstacles stacked up against them. It's very hard. But I guess I would say, please reach out for help, because you are deserving of help. You are deserving to be in a safe space, a safe place, because it's our basic need. Safety and security is actually so undervalued, but it's actually a basic need. But also at the same time, I know that a lot of victims may also be, there's this term called trauma bonding. They may be bonded to their abuser and they cannot break out of that cycle. But if you are aware at all that I'm trapped in this toxic cycle, I don't know how to get out of it, again, you need to get help. You need to reach out for help. Call a helpline, go to a counselor, talk to a trusted friend. And the more you hear someone say, no, this is not right, then the more, even though you're already conditioned to think that this is the norm, but slowly you can break away from it lah. So if you know someone who is in this situation, I would say try not to give up on them. And don't feel like, why have they put themselves in this situation, because they didn't. We don't know the full story sometimes. So just try to be there for them and hold space for them.
I was just going to ask you what would be one piece of advice that you have for girls in their 20s, and I guess like
you are absolutely deserving of love. You absolutely should not be treated with disrespect. Don't care about what anybody else says. Just take care of yourself. Learn to love yourself first so that you don't end up in a toxic relationship. And you are enough lah. You know, we are all capable of growing and learning, and we may make mistakes, but you know what? Then just learn and move on now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. If you are a parent or you're planning on having a child and need some help, Chapter Zero Singapore runs great workshops on mindful and respectful parenting. You can reach out to them on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Chapter Zero Singapore. As usual, if you guys want to chat, you can reach me on Instagram at somethingprivatepod or email me at Nicole at somethingprivate.fm. Tune in to the full episode on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast.